Welcome to today's meeting of the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas and Glengarry, today being Monday, September 18th. Madam Clerk, the resolution to call the meeting to order.
It's moved by Councillor Broad, seconded by Councillor Bergeron, that the meeting of the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas and Glengarry be hereby called to order.
All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. And at this point, there's a bit of a highlight to today. If I could ask Rebecca Russell to come ahead and speak some congratulatory remarks about an employee. Thank you.
Good morning, Council. I'd like to take this opportunity to recognize Carolyn McCullough, our Payroll and Benefits Coordinator, for completing her AMCTO Diploma in Municipal Administration. Carolyn is sitting over there. I just want to say a few words. Over the last 3 years, Carolyn has continuously pursued professional development, dedicating her time and energy to setting goals and achieving the highest standard in her studies. Her work ethic is second to none, her dedication to tackling new projects is refreshing, and her perseverance with problem solving and accepting new challenges is inspiring. And, which I hold very near and dear to my heart, she critically analyzes accounts and transactions with an eagle eye, always balancing to the penny. As part of the AMCTO Municipal Administration Diploma, Carolyn has completed all 4 units, including receiving 100% in completing the Employment Law and Human Resources for Municipalities Certificate Program, for which she was the winner of the AMCTO's Award of Excellence in 2020. In June, Carolyn was honored during the 2023 AMCTO Conference Awards, receiving the Award of Excellence in completing her diploma in municipal administration, and was inducted into the AMCTO's Academic Honor Roll for her high achievement. Please join me in congratulating Carolyn on her well-deserved success. I'm so proud to have her as part of our team.
Yes, and on behalf of Council Carolyn, I'd like to also extend congratulations and thanks for your efforts to achieve such high praise, and it'll serve us all well and serve the residents of SDG well too. So thank you once again. It's well appreciated. Madam Clerk, if could you have the resolution for the agenda, please?
It's moved by Councillor Laundrie, seconded by Councillor Broad, that Council approve the agenda.
All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Any disclosures of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Seeing none. Madam Clerk, the resolution for the minutes.
It's moved by Councillor Bergeron, seconded by Councillor Broad, that the minutes of the meetings, including the in-camera minutes of the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas and Glengarry, held August 28th and September 5th, 2023, be adopted as circulated.
All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. At this point of the meeting, we have one delegation with us. We have the Social Development Council, and at this point, I'm not sure who's going to come forward. There's many, but whoever is coming forward, please come ahead. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. We have to figure out the technology and then we'll be fine to go. Good morning, Warden Fraser, members of County Council, and members of the administration. We thank you for the opportunity. Pardon me? We thank you for the opportunity to speak to you about the Social Development Council of Cornwall and area, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have. You should have all received the backgrounder about the SDC. And that document is much more comprehensive. However, we're happy to highlight some of our regular activities during this presentation. With us this morning we have myself. My name is Patty Carson, and I'm the board chair for the SDC. We have Farhana Menji with us, who's the vice chair, and Melanie Boileau, who's the project assistant. And in the audience, we have a number of our board members, as well as Carrie Lynn Hebert, who is our executive director. And we also have with us today Karma Williams, who sits on our board, as full disclosure, who's part of your council. Charlene Davidson is with us, and Laura Lake is with us as well today as part of our delegation.
So, sorry,
Go.
can you hear me? Is that okay? Okay. Before we begin, we want to mention that we will be moving forward with a name change this upcoming year. We plan to stay the Social Development Council, but we're going to be dropping Cornwall and area, which will be replaced with the tagline, Engaging Communities Across SDG, Cornwall, and Akwesasne. The SDC, Social Development Council, is an independent nonprofit organization that began activity in 2006. Social planning councils are not-for-profit organizations that focus on addressing community-level problems and challenges and spanning a wide variety of issues on social policy. Generally, social planning councils are not service providers. Rather, they work with existing nonprofit, charitable, and social service providers to focus on addressing gaps, strategic planning, research, and project coordination on relevant issues that a community is faced with. The Social Development Council does this work through strong partnerships and several initiatives.
So, recently the Board of Directors completed a new strategic plan, and it will take us into 2026. Some key things emerged during the development of this plan. Thank you. As a board of directors, we're extremely proud and committed to the ongoing work of our executive director to address the mission and encompass the vision of the SDC. While we were looking at our strategic plan, two key areas of focus became evident as essential to sustaining and building on our work and commitment to the community. First, we have a requirement for sustainable financial and human resources. The second thing that we found was important as a board of directors was the idea of strengthening and expanding relationships throughout our region, Cornwall, SDG, and Akwesasne. As Farhana was saying, the SDC tends to work a lot in the background, and often we're not seen as the agency that's doing the work and is providing service. So that's an important part of what we want to be doing. So if you look, the 4 strategic objectives that you see here in front of you provide the foundation for our operations consistent with these key areas of focus. So these are the things that we're looking to work on under the strategic objectives. As you can see, I won't read it to you, but really important that the strategic objectives talk about adequate human and financial resources, as well as relationship strengthening. And that's part of why we're here today, is we want to strengthen the relationships with the counties. The SDC serves the counties, but we need to make it more apparent that we work in the counties as well and strengthen that relationship so we are doing a better job of serving those needs as well. And part of that is promoting, valuing, and celebrating our achievements as an SDC. And we're, of course, working on equity and diversity. We strive to achieve these objectives with some of the following projects and initiatives.
So first of all, I'm going to be talking about the Employability Network. As the Social Development Council began operating in the years when Cornwall faced great job loss with the closure of the Domtar paper mill, one of its first established networks was the Employability Network. The network is made up of 54 members that represent 26 agencies that provide Cornwall, SDG, and Akwesasne with employment and training services and programs. Along with meeting monthly to share information within agencies to work better together, the network is also the host for the annual Cornwall and Area Job Fair. The network also hosts workshops targeted towards local employers to support them, especially during this time of labor shortage. We also have the Volunteer Administrators Network, or VAN, which was created in 2009 to address a gap that was identified by volunteer managers across the region. The purpose of this network is to provide support to volunteer administrators through sharing of knowledge and best practices. Since its inception, the VAN Executive Committee has hosted monthly workshops for members on a number of topics such as volunteer recruitment, and retention, volunteer engagement and appreciation, using social media to recruit, and so much more. Third, I'll be talking about the Regional Emergency Strategic Response Council. The RESRC was formed within 2 weeks of the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. This multi-sectoral group was made up of 20 agencies representing 20 different sectors within the human, health, and social services, met weekly to evaluate and define the community's pressing needs during a time of crisis and work collaboratively to address these needs. This council is co-led by the SDC and the United Way Centraide of SDG. Although the pandemic is no longer a crisis in our communities, the group decided to continue to meet on a bi-monthly basis to address any other emergencies that might face the residents of SDG, Cornwall, and Akwesasne. Having the council already formed means that it can work quickly to address future concerns. A housing and homelessness working group has been formed by the council led by Juliette Labossière of the United Way of SDG, who is also the nonprofit representative to the A-Home Collaborative and ensures the work complements the efforts of the municipalities. The Social Development Council also provides project management. It's available to provide project management services to initiatives that align with strategies of the Vibrant Communities Plan for a fee for service. Notable projects include Aging Well, the Senior Health and Safety Fair, and the Building Safer Communities Fund. We also provide information sharing. So the nonprofit and social service sectors are forever changing, due to funding constraints, changing needs, staff turnover, and more. So sharing information about programs and services is critical to keep the frontline sector aware of the support available to their clients. The SDC is committed to playing a key role in community information sharing through a number of outlets, such as successful monthly community spotlight series and information sharing email networks. Last, partnerships and incubation. So the SDC supports individuals and community groups with events and social development initiatives with in-kind services if they do not have nonprofit status. The support can be provided in a number of ways, such as acting as the banker for a project and providing bookkeeping services, liability insurance, support with funding applications, connection to community partners, use the SDC website for projects, social media, marketing support, record keeping, human resource management, payroll, and volunteer coordination. Some projects, events, and groups may be familiar with that are in the SDC family include Transition Cornwall, Your Brain on Food, Tenants Association of Cornwall and Area, and of course the Cornwall Culture Fest, which is happening this Saturday, September 23rd from 10 to 4 at Lemwitter Park. And this is really just a snapshot of what the SDC has been working on.
Perfect, thank you. Finally, Vibrant Communities, our safety and well-being plan. This is a collaboration between the Social Development Council Collective Impact Initiative, Vibrant Communities, and the Government of Ontario's mandated Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. The SDC took the lead in developing the regional plan on behalf of the City of Cornwall, the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne, and the United Counties of SDG. You may recall the plan coming into Council in April 2022, which received unanimous support. As a quick reminder, the 5 pillars, as determined by our community, are mental health, health services, poverty, community safety, and community well-being. The Social Development Council has been working with over 100 community agencies to implement this plan that will ideally create a better quality of life for our communities. Slide 5, thank you. We hope to bring one more fantastic community initiative under the Social Development Council's umbrella with your support. You should be familiar with our local situation table. Their mission is a collaborative, integrated, multi-agency team to build safer and healthier communities through rapid mobilization of resources to meet the immediate needs of those experiencing acute elevated risk. As you're about to learn, similarly to the Social Development Council, the Situation Table has recently lost its core funding to continue operating past December 2023. The Social Development Council Board sees the Situation Table as a frontline version of our mandate and hopes to have it included with its operational budgets moving forward. All right, so 6. Now, with that being said, the next slide was created by Melissa Morgan, who I do believe is here. Yay! Hello, Melissa. General Manager, Human Services and Long-Term Care, to provide some background on our organization's funding history. So for close to 15 years, the Social Development Council has received $60,000 annually from the Ontario Works Division of the Human Services Department. Effective January 2024, the Ontario Works Division will be transitioning to Employment Service Transformation. As part of this ministry initiative, they will also receive a new funding formula. The Ontario Works Program delivery funding transfer will reflect the shift of responsibilities for employment assistance to Employment Ontario starting January 1st, 2024. As a result, 22% reduction in their budget. Based on this information, the transfer of an annual allocation to the Social Development Council will no longer be eligible expense or financially feasible with the Ontario Works budget. As such, the Social Development Council will lose $60,000 of core funding commencing in 2024. On January 11, 2022, the Human Services Department provided early notice to the Social Development Council of future funding cuts. On March 22nd, the Human Service Department provided official notice that they would no longer be able to provide funding to the SDC as of January 1st, 2024.
So, thank you. As mentioned on Melissa's slide, the SDC has survived with $60,000 a year since 2009 with no increase. This has been difficult to manage, although the $60,000 was great, but it has been difficult to manage, especially in the last few years, as we take on larger projects such as your community safety and well-being plan, excuse me. There is great potential for the SDC to address major community needs, but only if the capacity of our organization can grow. The major difference you see in the request before you today is in order for us to have an increase to 2 full-time staff members. We currently are budgeted for 1 full-time staff person, and we've been able to bring other staff people on dependent upon grants, et cetera, that we were able to achieve. You can see in our year-end March 31st, 2023, and budget for year ending March 31st, 2024, that we usually end our year with more income than what we've been receiving from Human Services. This is thanks to grants and projects that our limited staff has successfully applied for, adding significantly to their workload. However, this is temporary and is not sustainable financially or in terms of human resources. It's incredibly difficult to hold on to dedicated staff when there's no guarantee of funding from year to year and sometimes month to month. So, as you can see, the core funding of $60,000 annually was never enough to cover our fixed expenses, such as insurance, rent, audit fees, website, etc., which has required our executive director's time and creativity to find additional funds to cover these expenses. A realistic annual budget for the SDC, including 2 full-time staff with all other annual operational expenses, is $150,175, plus the addition of the situation table. Once you add the expected revenue we bring in for the annual job fair, our total funding request is for $144,675, shared between the City of Cornwall and the United Counties. So our board executive discussed the different ways we could request the split in funding. And there were a couple options. If we were to look at population, it would be 58% for the counties and 41% for the city. However, we know due to attendance numbers, larger events are often hosted in Cornwall, like our job fair. When we looked at the usual 70-30 split, we see that we see with most shared services, it did not represent accurately how we engage with the counties. We believe a fair split, more representative of the communities we work with, is 50-50 at $72,337.50. I forget the 50 cents, each annual for the duration of a 4-year MOU.
Thank Thank you. We are happy to answer any question and address any concerns you may have. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much for, thank you very much for the presentation, ladies. So I will open it up to questions and comments from members of council. Councillor McDonald, please.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and thank you for your presentation, and thank you for the work that you guys do. This once again feels like a provincial download to us, as we've been seeing in the last few years. Doesn't really click with our core services. But having said that, I understand why you're here. I guess my question is, we're not unique to losing this money throughout the province. I'm sure it's happening at other SDCs. Has there been any effort to lobby for to the provincial government, and have you seeked out other funding opportunities that may help decrease the costs that you're asking from the municipalities? Thanks.
Take that? Okay. Thank you for the question. All SDCs, social development councils across the province, it's hard to give one answer because they're all funded differently. So the relationship that we had with the city previously was unique, and that's where that funding came from for us. SDCs can be funded strictly by the municipality, as is the case in, let me just find out where. Quickly. Thank you. As in the case in Picton, BC, was one of the cases we found when we were doing research into that. They have a population of 33,761, and their social development council is part of their municipal government and is completely funded as a department. And they have a budget of $758,815 to do the kind of work that the SDC does. But in that case, it's funded completely by the municipality as a government, with employees getting benefits and all of the other things too. So the cost is high. There are other SDCs that operate strictly on funding from fundraising. There is fundraising that happens as well for other SDCs. Grant applications. United Way funds some of the SDCs as well. So it's very different across. So I don't believe that any SDC that I know of, but I can check with our executive director, if any are directly funded by the province. But Carrie, can you confirm, do you know?
I was asked to not speak because there's
You're not speaking.
I'm not speaking.
I'm just asking if any are funded. Yes, no, maybe?
We were specifically funded through employment services.
Okay.
Some may be funded by the province, but maybe not specifically under that budget. Could you relay the message?
I can do that. So that's how, as you may have heard my colleagues say, we were specifically through Human Services here, through the municipality. It was provincial money, but we don't believe that there's anybody who's directly funded in that way. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Further questions, comments? Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, through you, Warden. Thank you very much for your presentation. I'm aware of a few things that you were doing, but certainly not aware of the scope of what you're doing. I have another comment, but I just want to double check. When you're referring to the situation table, you're referring to the table that, like, the police service is involved? Okay. So I guess I just want to speak to how important that is. And I mean, just tying it back to a situation that a lot of folks here were at. We're at AMO in London, where they're having huge issue in terms of mental health, opiate addiction, homelessness, and the model that they're trying to implement to try and deal with that is very much a regrouping of all these organizations to come together to find the best way. So I just wanted to put a plug in for organizations like that really do help. That they're super important and they help avoid some of these larger issues that other municipalities are dealing with. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Morden, and through you. Thanks for the presentation, guys. Right at the very beginning, you're collaborating with 3 partners, but you're only here asking for money from 2. Akwesasne, it seems like they're a partner, seems like you're involved, but not going to them for any funding, just wondering why. I mean, Akwesasne does have quite a bit more funds than likely the city and us.
Thank you for that question as well. And we are currently in conversation with the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne regarding strengthening our relationship with their community and how to engage in further funding and projects. In the spirit of reconciliation, we're working our way through that agreement and approaching that council in that way, speaking to how we can serve their community best and how we can build partnerships in a way that's equitable and fair in their view as well.
Further questions, comments? Yes, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Thanks for your presentation. I know that some members around the council table aren't as familiar with the good work of the SDC as I am. The advantage of sitting on the board, even though I'm a new member. So I think it would be, what I would like to request, Mr. Warden, is that a staff report be produced that would then come to our next council meeting, provide councillors with some more information, and then we can perhaps move from there.
Yes, Councillor Williams, I think that it would be important to bring everyone up to the same level of understanding with the SDC, how it contributes to all of us, and that would be important. So thank you for bringing that up. Yes, ma'am.
May we just make the offer, of course, that if administration requires any research or wants to, we're happy to work with them to talk about what's happening in the counties as well.
Thank you. I do have one question of my own. On one of the PowerPoint slides, it was about the Regional Emergency Response Council. How closely do you align with the emergency management that takes place at each lower tier municipality and with Ms. Beeler here at the counties? The interactions that take place.
So part of a more formal relationship is on the agenda for the coming year of the Regional Emergency Response Committee. As we said on the slide, I believe that that particular committee came into being, was pulled together very quickly as a response to COVID. So spent most of the initial time looking at social services needs in sort of a crisis response, sort of an emergency response situation. So we're not sort of as focused on relationship building as we feel like we should have been with the Regional Emergency Response Council. So that is definitely on our agenda for this year as the Regional Emergency Response Committee looks at that and tries to sort of look more at planning and mitigation versus crisis response. But one of the things I did want to highlight that particular group was involved in that will be important to the counties is very involved in the development of what's called the Last Resort Fund, which some folks may be familiar with. The Last Resort Fund here is managed through within the counties is managed through House of Lazarus to help support people who are fundamentally at the end of their rope, the last resort, for help with social services needs and those kind of things as well. It's managed by Agape in the city of Cornwall, and managed by House of Lazarus here. So that was one of the projects. Also, the distribution of food hampers within the county was an important part of the work that was done, and that happened within the counties as well.
Thank you. I look around the room. If there's nothing further, I'm sorry. I barely saw his hand. Councillor McGillis.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I just wanted to say I'm well familiar with what goes on with SDC. And I want to thank Carolyn for sending, the correspondence and information that, ongoing business throughout the year, and we appreciate that. So we get to know what's going on, and I know how busy you are. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We appreciate Carolyn very much.
Very much, very much.
So, thank you very much for the presentation. It's good to have information provided to us, and to Councillor Williams' concern, I do look forward to that report that could bring us all up to speed. So once again, thank you very much, and have a pleasant day.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
At this time, Madam Clerk, if we could have the resolution for closed session.
It's moved by Councillor Densham, seconded by Councillor Bergeron, that council proceed in camera pursuant to Section 239 2B of the Municipal Act 2001, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and pursuant to Section 239 2K, a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or behalf of the municipality or local board for a matter related to the Glen Store Dun Lodge.
All those in favor? Opposed?
assets on their disposal and/or retirement. We will be required to adopt this policy for the 2023 year, and it will be reflected in our 2023 audited financial statements. Some local municipalities have already adopted this policy. Many across Ontario, even Canada, are required, all are required to have this policy, and they pretty much all look the same. For us, it's just been really tweaked a little bit to coincide with what assets we have. We don't have landfills, so we don't have to include those in the policy. So basically, it's just to provide a formal procedure for stipulating the costs associated with the retirement of those assets. So our next step in the process after this policy is adopted is to determine what our liability is on our future obligation to retire the assets. So that'll be a process that we'll be working with the roads department, as most of our assets are related to bridges, and buildings would be another one that we would have to look at if there's asbestos. So anyways, this policy is just to ensure we meet that legislative requirement. Any questions?
Thank you. Questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Thank you, Ms. Russell. Before I ask for the resolution for the consent agenda, comments from directors, managers, if any? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
It's moved by Councillor Densham, seconded by Councillor Broad, that all items listed under the consent agenda section of the agenda be received for information purposes.
All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Boards and committees. The Warden's report. We were at Ontario East recently, and it was disappointing that I believe no ministers or MPPs had shown up, except for one on video. But I did have an opportunity to sit in on the 7 and 7. That's an endeavor from the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus for the 7,000 homes in 7 years. And I also happened to have a conversation with a regional representative for Enbridge, and I believe there's an effort to organize a meeting of some type with that person from Enbridge to bring forward some of the concerns from our local areas, our local councils, about the challenges we face with Enbridge and ways to gain more access to gas lines. It may come to nothing. It may be a futile effort, but nevertheless, I think we're going to try that again. We just had a meeting of the Joint Liaison Committee. I'll lean on Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Just a few highlights of the meeting is that they've formally, for the community paramedicine program, that it is now part of our base funding, so we don't have to apply for it every year. Part of it is that we have to provide 24-hour service, so they're working on that and how that'll work out. There's a backlog in capital purchases for ambulance, so everything that was committed in 2023 will move to the approved 2024 budget, since we have not received any ambulances at this time. Budgets for all of the joint liaison that we're a part of will be presented to us in October. We received an update of all the capital maintenance and ongoing repairs for all the developments that we currently are working under, and looks like the one on 9th Street is occupied and completed. There's 77 units there. I think that's about it for the highlights. Turn to you, Mr. Warden, if you recall anything else.
No, thank you very much for that. Was you did cover a lot there, and that was most of the highlights, I do believe. Yes, Councillor McGillis, if you could follow up on that, please.
Just maybe a little bit of a follow-up, as you said, Mr. Warden. The offload delays are still continuing in our hospitals, and the CCH has hired paramedics to work in the emergency department. and the province has announced funding commitments towards offloading nurses, which is a good thing. As Councillor McDonald mentioned a little bit about the land ambulance backlog in receiving replacement ambulance. A new procedure now is requiring a deposit to secure ambulance, and you need an 8 month in advance. You needed, and now the deposit, which is was never the norm before, is now. The waiting list updates for housing programs for, say, the household type applicants. It was for families in July 2023. It was 135, and approximately wait time is 1.5 years. For single or a couple and non-seniors, the wait time is 4.3 years, and that there's 212 requests for that as well. And seniors, there's 96 people waiting, and for the approximate time for the fill, that is another year or two as well. So, also child care, 92% of licensed child care centers are not operated in their licensed capacity because of the lack of staffing. So that's an issue too as well, besides all the things we heard today.
Thank you for that, Councillor McGillis. But you did remind me of something that I found odd at that meeting, was the use of paramedics instead of nurses to support or to try to eliminate the offload delays, and that is particular to Cornwall Hospital, correct? And but that's not throughout SDG. It's not affecting the Glengarry Hospital or the Winchester Hospital. That's excuse me, exclusive through an effort by Cornwall to recruit paramedics, which does not affect that. That's a job that paramedics have taken on themselves. If there's questions, and there were questions at the meeting about that, that's a job that the paramedics took on themselves as a part-time role. It wasn't assigned to them by SDG Cornwall paramedics. It's separate, and other hospitals may attempt to do the same sort of hiring of paramedics to support the offload delays at our local hospitals within SDG. Thank you both for that. Library Board, Councillor Landry.
We haven't met since our last council meeting. I believe our next scheduled meeting is on September 28th.
Thank you. Police Services. Oh, I'm sorry.
If I may, Your Warden,
Councillor Broad, I didn't see the hand.
Councillor Landry jumped on that, which is excellent. Next meeting next week. I wanted to remind everybody of our upcoming event, SDG Reads, October 23rd. Don't forget to pick up your copies of your Maureen Jennings books at any of our SDG libraries.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Warden.
Thank you for that. And Councillor Broad, I was lagging behind on finishing the first, but I was quickly able to get through the first just recently, and I look forward to getting through the second and third before the upcoming event, and thank you for bringing that forward. You just have to focus, just focus. Focus for about 4 hours and you get through one. That's the other key. You're correct, Councillor. Police Services Board. Anything? An upcoming meeting, Councillor McGillis. Eastern Ontario Health Unit. I'm not sure who's going to speak to that.
No, we have a meeting coming up this week, I believe. However, I don't know, Councillor Lang, were you on the call with the ministry 2 weeks ago? Were you on that call?
No, I wasn't.
No. Okay, I'll just brief you quickly on it. It was a Zoom call that all boards of health across the province were invited to, and the ministry was presenting their plan. Of course, as you know, the funding has gone back to the 75-25 split, which is good news for us. Also part of that plan is they're encouraging health units to amalgamate. Is not apparently in an effort to save money or reduce services. They intend to keep services the same, and no dollars need to be proven to be saved in this. The idea is to become more efficient. And so they're actually looking at health units to voluntarily amalgamate. If there are either specific services they can amalgamate or the entire health units to amalgamate. There's a timeline on it, which I cannot remember. And I think that if there are enough amalgamations, I've already heard that there is one, and I believe it's in Northern Ontario. If there are enough amalgamations that are done voluntarily, then the ministry will probably quietly stop talking about it. And if there aren't enough voluntary amalgamations, then I wouldn't be surprised if they start pushing a little bit over time. So that's an interesting development, and we'll see where it goes. Thank you.
That is interesting. Councillor McGillis.
Just through you, Mr. Warden, is that request for amalgamation throughout Ontario for the health units, the whole province?
Glen Stordon Lodge.
No meeting last month. We are meeting tomorrow morning. Full update next meeting.
Thank you, Councillor. St. Lawrence River Institute, Councillor Gaindo.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Through you, there is no update as the next meeting is next week, but if you would grant me the indulgence, I'd like to comment on another matter very briefly. Thank you. I just wanted to thank the municipality of South Dundas for hosting the first annual baseball tournament for SDG on Friday. It was well attended and well organized, and I just want to say that I'm very proud that South Stormont took this year's championship in quite a dominant fashion.
Excuse me. No flag waving, please. I'm glad you brought that up, Councillor, though. That was a great event. I'm going to interrupt the report. So that was a great event that was held in South Dundas. There were teams that tried very hard to win, and congratulations to South Stormont and all those. And congratulations and thanks to all those that participated. Score kept, were cheerleading or just spectating, and to the players. I look forward to that event carrying on as we go forward. It was very nice to see everyone to get together. It was an idea that was spawned from North and South Glengarry, and Chantal at North Glengarry was one of the champions of that idea. And so if you could extend thanks to Chantal at North Glengarry, it's appreciated. But all in all, it was the weather was good, and the fun was had, and I look forward to next year. And I'd like to see some other people play. So thank you. Anything further, Councillor? Raising South Nation Source Water Protection, Councillor Bergeron.
I still don't have a date for the next meeting, and I think our last meeting was in June and July, which I reported on quite a while back, and I'm still waiting for another one.
Thank you. Algonquin Land Claim, nothing. Eastern Ontario Agri-Food Network, Councillor Williams. Nothing. Regional Incentive Programs approval, I'm not sure. Nothing. Social Development Council, Councillor Williams, would you like to add on? Thank you. So we can move into key information. I'm sorry, Councillor Williams.
Mr. Warden, would you indulge me for just 2 minutes?
Under advisement?
Yeah.
Please do.
It's with regards to, I was just in Waterloo this last week for Roma meetings, and I just wanted, I have a presentation that I can actually forward to anybody who might be interested in it. The City of Waterloo has engaged in a very, very interesting project, and it's to address homelessness in their city. And they've actually opened in April a managed encampment. So it is run by the city, it was funded by the city, it is run by the city. They've got 50 very small homes that are only 100 square feet, made out of shipping containers. And they've created this encampment. They've put 50 homeless people in there, and the city paid for it 100% and pays the operating. It's in the ballpark of $2 million to build it, and then another $2 million to operate it every year. And it's a serious commitment to the beginnings of trying to end homelessness in that city. And it's absolutely fascinating, because I was kind of gobsmacked, to be honest with you, when I heard the word managed encampment. I thought, are they crazy? But it's a model that is probably, if it's successful, as they move people through that project in 18 to 24 months, they've got to move them out and get them into permanent housing. And if they can manage that in 18 to 24 months, I would think that it would be considered a great success, and then I could see it being duplicated in other communities. So if anyone is interested, they've got a whole housing and homelessness plan. They're probably way ahead a whole lot of other cities across Ontario. So if anyone's interested, I can forward you that information.
Thank you, Councillor, and I would suggest that if you could forward that to our clerk, and I think it would behoove us all to have that information circulated, if for nothing else, but at least information purposes, because as we're out here in where we live, encampments are a foreign idea for most of us, and we need to be better educated, maybe not on the Waterloo issue, but just the general issue on that whole thing. So if you could forward it, and then I'm sure our clerk will forward it around. Councillor McGillis.
Yeah, and I was following that too as well, Councillor Williams. I think it was the cost of those containers were like $10,000 or $20,000 something, very frugal. So that'd be something to look into, for sure.
Okay, if there's nothing further, key information. Ms. Russell, the key meeting the meeting dates or suggested meeting dates.
Okay, so it's that time of year again. We're looking at possible budget deliberation dates that suit council. We had decided earlier in May that we would like to complete the budget early this year in December. We were suggesting December 5th and 6th. However, I'm leaving that up to council to look at their calendars and see what suits council best.
Ms. Russell and fellow councillors, if I could be indulged, I looked at my calendar, and I believe I'm unavailable the 5th, but I am available the 6th and 7th. That's a Wednesday, Thursday. I believe 5th, 6th is Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yes.
Tuesday doesn't work for me at all, and I hope there's enough notice that I'd be able to attend 2 days. Thank you. As I go around the room for a straw poll, 6, 7, Wednesday, Thursday. No issues? Thank you. So,
Yes, I will set it.
and you have the next one too. Credit card fees.
So when we completed the 2023 budget process and we were going through the expenses for the year, and credit cards were brought up and the cost of utilizing credit cards for customer service, one council member had requested that I come back with a report on what the options were regarding credit card fees and how we could possibly charge those fees back to the consumer. And I just wanted to provide a brief overview of what we currently do with regards to when we accept credit card fees, or when we accept credit cards for certain payments, and who absorbs the fees in those cases. So for court services and our false alarm program, we implemented a system called Paymentus, which is a third-party online platform for accepting payments for fines and false alarm fines. Paymentus allows for, when paying online, they do charge and disclose that there is a convenience fee for using the service online. So that fee, the party paying for the fine or the false alarm program does pay the 3% approximately, and we do not absorb those fees as part of an expense to the county. When a defendant comes in and pays a fine in person, we use a system called Global Payments. It's a terminal that we have here at the Court Services Reception Desk, and we do not transfer the fees to the defendant when they come in and pay the fine. That is something that the county absorbs as part of the court services budget. It wasn't until October of last year where the legislation had changed, and now there's the opportunity to charge back some of those fees, which I'll go into a little bit more detail later. Planning and transportation services, they implemented a system called Stripe at the very end of last year, so we had a full year to start with the Stripe system. It's been very effective in being integrated with the cloud permitting system with planning, as well as being used for the one window project in the moving permit system. So the two systems integrate very, very well, and the payments are made prior to getting the permit or the application for planning. One thing to note, so since January of this year, planning also collects fees on behalf of local municipalities and conservation authorities, which in combination with the online card payments, it has significantly reduced processing times for SDG as well as local municipalities. When we absorb the credit card fees through Stripe, that is a county cost. We don't transfer that fee on to the payer. Stripe does allow for the option of us adding a fee, but no more than 2.4%, and it has to be done manually prior to any payment is made through the Stripe process. So it is a little bit cumbersome, and there would be some additional work on our end if that's what council decides to do. If we do end up adding a fee, it can be no more than 2.4%, and it's not a full cost recovery. And the same would be for transportation services. Tourism and library services. So tourism had been using a system called the Square for some time. It's a small little machine. You see it in a lot of small businesses where people can tap their card and pay in person, and it's very portable. They could bring it with them and set it up with their iPad. There are fees that are charged for using your debit card. I think it's 25 cents per transaction, and then the credit card fees would be on top of that, which are absorbed by the county as well. That's a county expense. Library services implemented Stripe at the beginning of this year in a few local branches, and it's been extremely efficient in collecting fees and fines for libraries, especially when there's such small costs. People don't have change in their pocket most of the time, and they're able to pay those fees and fines much more effectively. And the costs are very minimal as the payments for these fines are so small. But that is a cost that library does absorb using a credit card. There are so we did just start using Stripe since it was so successful for transportation and planning. We just implemented Stripe for tourism as well, for collecting payments for accounts receivable invoices such as the tourism signs, facility rentals for the jail, things like of that nature. And it's become, we just started doing that in August. It's much more efficient system using that, because when somebody wants to book the jail or facility for the weekend and they book it on a Friday, we're able to receive payment up front and payment ahead of them being able to rent the facility, which has been beneficial. Otherwise, we sometimes have to chase for the money to get paid in full, and then there's more administrative work involved if we have to collect money after. So the Stripe system just being used for tourism has been very successful. but it is a cost to use because credit card fees are absorbed by the county. So there are two options in addition to the items that I mentioned. With the change in legislation in October of last year, should the county decide that we want to charge back fees, we have processes that have to be followed first, and we have a little bit of investigation to do. Option one, we are able to charge a surcharge. This option was allowed since October of 2022, but fees must not be higher than the actual cost, or 2.4%. It must be disclosed at point of sale, entrance, and on receipt. And Visa and MasterCard must be notified in writing 30 days before proceeding to charge the fee. So there's a little bit of work that needs to be done in advance should we opt this decision. Option two, it's called a service fee. So Visa does allow the additional service fees for the payment of fines. MasterCard does not prohibit charging a service fee if it applies to all transactions across the board. So a thorough review of Visa and MasterCard's policies would have to be reviewed a little bit more detail should we decide to go that route. Ultimately, customers prefer to pay by credit card now. That's just the way that the society has become, is people don't carry cash as much anymore, or checks. So the option of paying by credit card is definitely more advantageous to the customer, and we received more prompt payment. Should council decide to do anything different than what we're doing, or want us to investigate any more options, we can definitely come back with an action request with a recommendation, or if council would prefer us leaving things the way they are, that is also an option. I just wanted to provide a little bit of an overview of what we currently do.
Thank you, Ms. Russell. Councillor Bergeron, then Councillor Landry.
Okay, as a business owner, I know, even though they passed legislation making it look like it would be easy to recoup that percentage, it isn't. It's very complicated, as you described. And so I see in your last line here is alternatively, we could go over the current fees and just increase it slightly to sort of cover those fees. And that would be the simplest thing to do if we want to recoup the fees.
If I may, I would 100% agree with that. It would be more advantageous, efficient, and it would not require so much background work.
Councillor Landry.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Warden. Thanks, Rebecca. I think we had a meeting maybe earlier in the year, and this was kind of brought up. So I don't believe anything to do with court services if you haven't abided by the law, and then expect that our residents or constituents would be covering a percentage because you're paying the advantage of the credit card. One aspect is points. Okay, people have in their minds that they want to use their card for that purpose. So for that point, I don't think that we should, any fund should be. So when they go through the process, we don't incur any cost from paymentist or whatever that. But if they come in here, do they also have the opportunity to pay with debit when they come in, so they both would be involved as a service?
Yes, so when any individual comes into the counter, they could pay by debit, Visa, MasterCard. We don't tend to accept American Express because the costs are so high. But when paying by in person, the counties does incur those costs for credit card.
So anybody that would not want to pay those services have the option, or the service charge has the option to pay with debit and pay just the cost itself. So with that being said, on court services, now when we go to planning, I understand we have different third party with Global and Stripe, but do we offer any kind of e-transfer opportunity, or is that something that cannot work, or maybe you can enlighten me on that?
We've investigated e-transfers in the past. Essentially, it is not really an overly secure method of accepting payment, and there would be a lot of room for error, security risks, things of that nature, especially, if we're on auto deposit, then who is the payment from, and then we got to do some research, or, if there's a password that's initiated with that e-transfer, then, whose email is it going to and who can it be accepted by, and there's just a lot of security risk and risk of internal control issues if we do by e-transfers. We do offer, we still accept check, we still accept payment by cash, we still accept EFT, which is mostly, most vendors are able to pay us by EFT. And we also accept payments through BMO because it is our bank, so a bill payment, but not other banks, just BMO.
Okay, no, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, through you. Would it be safe to say that well over 90% is credit card payments?
That sounds probably right, but I'd have to really, the majority would be credit card.
But it's a vast majority.
Vast majority, and absolutely with fines, I would say yes, because the majority of those defendants are outside of SDG, and really the convenience of not coming to Cornwall when you're from Toronto, Montreal, or anywhere else in the province, paying that fine online is definitely the way that they choose to do it. I can say that in the past, before we had Stripe for tourism, that's been recent, or the Square for library, it was much harder to collect money that was owing. And when people pay by check, and if the check NSFs, then we have more administration work and a $50 NSF fee that we have to add. And then, if people have the opportunity of paying by credit card, it does limit the amount of administration work as well on our end. As for the so all the transportation, Stripe payments are all done by credit card for the moving permits. So yeah, it would probably close to 80 to 90%.
All right. Well, I'm going to agree with Councillor Bergeron then that if we are concerned, and it looks like it's under $20,000, but if we're concerned, we just add a little bit to our fees and make it up that way. Just make it simple.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Densham.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, through you. I guess the question is for court and the punitive items, the court and the false alarms. Is that something we can increase the service fees to recoup the costs for? Or does that go directly to the court system, and the only way to recoup that would be to add a surcharge?
So for court services and false alarm, all payments that are made by credit card online, we don't pay the fees. Those are transferred to the defendant. Okay. So that's the only way, those are the only two that are transferred right now, is for false alarm, which we very minimally receive checks or cash for false alarm anymore. They mostly pay online, and there has been nobody has ever said anything negative about the fee. I think the false alarm payment may be $35, and the fee for doing it online is, I think, 2.8%. On a $25 fine, most people, we have not heard anything negative about that. Same with court services. Paying online, the defendant absorbs the fees. Prior to 2019, whenever we had not had Paymentus, our credit card costs were upwards. One year it was $62,000 in credit card fees for court services alone. So after we implemented Paymentus, it went down. The first year was, I think, about $12,000 or $14,000, and it's even, well, court hasn't been as active, so it's reduced even more now. But court services and false alarm are the ones that incur the costs by the defendant itself.
Okay, that's perfect, because that's the only one that I would be tempted to have recovered. Optically, I think if we try to put an additional service fee on things like planning and other things, I think that's just going to be a thorn in a lot of people's sides. So I agree. I suspect our charges are already in our budget. So if we need to raise our service fees to accommodate that would be better. And again, even from the library's perspective, I think the real win is we're getting the book back. It's not about the fee. It's more about receiving the book back. So thank you.
If I may make one more comment. So with regards to planning and accepting payments through Stripe, we accept the payment for all the, throughout the application process for all the locals and the South Nation as well. So when we receive that payment and we incur the cost, we do not transfer that cost to the locals either. That's just an SDG cost, and it's part of the efficient process that we've come up with that's working really great. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Anything further? So a quick look around the room. I think I've heard the alternative a couple times mentioned. How do we feel about the alternative as I go around the room? Anything? No, 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 yes. I think there's some direction to investigate the alternative.
Yes, we can come back with fees and charges bylaw with increasing the fees to reflect a 3% increase.
Thank you. Next up, SDG Tourism, Karina and Peter, please. I'm sorry, Ms. Belanger and Mr. Young. The highlights.
We have pictures.
Perfect.
Go ahead.
So good morning, Council. We're happy to be here today and provide you with an update of our summer tourism season. So to start, I'll go over, we hired 5 summer students this year, so we upped that number from 4 just to provide better coverage throughout the events in the county and for the jail. So we did receive funding for the students from both the Canada Summer Jobs Program. We received $10,800, and the Summer Experience Program, we received $3,800. So as mentioned, the first part of the students' responsibility was to act as mobile tourism ambassadors. So from May to August, they attended many different events, county fairs, markets. They set up booths in popular tourist areas and provided travel counseling to both residents and visitors to the counties. Also providing some travel counseling in the jail when it was open. So tourism staff, we did ask them to track their daily interactions with visitors and also invite visitors to complete a mobile survey. So overall, this summer, they did attend close to 30 events, and they interacted with over 1,400 people. The top visitor locations by traffic were the Glengarry Highland Games, Long Sault Parkway, and the Morrisburg Tubi Festival. Key interests of visitors were, of course, our Discover Guide as well as the City of Cornwall Visitor Guide. We had winery and brewery rat cards, which were very popular, and as always, cycling in the county. So our cycling map as well as the Southeastern Ontario map were popular. And then everyone loves SDG swag, so that was another popular option at our booths. Now looking closer into the actual jail this year, we had a really successful 2023 season. So after opening up last year, after COVID, we decided to extend jail tours for an extra day as well as some extra time slots. So tours were offered to the public Thursday through Sundays from May 25th to August 27th. And new this year, we did offer mobile booking, online booking for guests as well. So in total, we saw 1,996 visitors to the jail and had over 20,000 in revenue. One of the goals this year was to increase our merchandise sales. So we did order some new things. There's some magnets, stickers, we got some hats, and our merchandise sales equaled $21.25. So that was up from about $500 in the previous years. That also included some concessions as well. We did several special events this year. So we started with some movie nights in the courtyard. We had 3 where we showed The Conjuring, Insidious, and The Shawshank Redemption. People loved them. They were often sold out within a couple days. We had over 160 attendees and 3,200 in ticket sales for the movie nights. We also tried yoga at the jail. So this was an hour yoga event outside, followed by a 30-minute jail tour. And then, as in other years, we participated in Doors Open as well. So that was the weekend of August 19th and 20th. The jail was open for free self-guided tours, and we saw over 500 visitors that weekend. A few other things that we're doing at the jail. So we're doing paranormal events and do have it open to film. So we continued our partnership with Ottawa Haunted Walks and the Phantoms of Yore. We offered paranormal investigations in February, May, and June. So far this year, we've seen $4,200 in revenue from that. And we have the last 2 weekends of October booked for the public events. And then we also partner with Phantoms of Yore for groups that want to come in and do private paranormal events. Another area that grew this year was film production. So we did welcome several this year. So we had crews from Ghost Hunters of Grand River come in, CBC and Dystopia Films, who created De-Influencer. So it was their follow-up to this. And we do have another company set to come in November for 2 days of filming. So this venture has, this year so far, we've seen $7,000 in revenue from film. So just next steps in summary, we did see quite a bit of growth again in 2023, and just keeping with the recommendations from the feasibility study that we did in 2021 from Lauren Christie, we're just capitalizing on our established brand. So it's something we want to continue to do by offering the tours, partnering with third parties, and then also opening up the jail for film. Moving forward, there's a few improvements that we're looking to do next year in the jail. So we do want to renovate a bathroom facility down there, as currently the only bathrooms are up here in council. So that would just allow for further growth, more events in the courtyard and such. And then also we're looking at doing the linoleum floors in the basement, as they're starting to come up and are a safety hazard. So those are two of the key things we're looking for next year. That's everything. We'd be happy to take any questions.
Questions, comments? Councillor Williams.
Good job. I'm impressed.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you.
You are allowed to echo, Councillor Williams. It is quite impressive. Yes, Councillor St. Pierre.
A couple buttons here. I don't know which ones I hit. So your movies that you showed was which movies?
So we had The Conjuring, Insidious, and then The Shawshank Redemption.
Shawshank Redemption on how to get out of jail.
Yes.
Maybe next year, The Green Mile.
Yes.
I'm just
some good suggestions. It was really the horror movies were the ones that people just loved.
And we sold local beer and products and everything from SDG for everyone who came there as well.
Yeah, we had some great concessions available, and it was a nice way to highlight some of those local businesses.
I have a question just to the movie nights. How many people would be in attendance? I know there was a lot of people that attended throughout the series, but in one evening.
So the capacity, we capped it at 70 per evening. So the first two, the horror movies, sold out. Shawshank, we ran into some weather issues, so we had to reschedule. There wasn't as many attendees to that, but 70 people sitting down fit comfortably in the courtyard. And I think we looked into it a little bit, and it could be up to 150 if it was a standing event out there.
Thank you. And I do want to express, as Councillor Williams did, to see the presentation and all of the events that take place here and throughout SDG, the attendance of the ambassadors at the events throughout the counties. Throughout the counties. It was quite impressive. I've seen, to me, it seems like there's been quite an improvement in the promotion and the presence and marketing of SDG and the tourism. It's quite impressive, Karina, and I want to thank you for all of that. And I look forward to a movie night, and I also think about the yoga. I think of the yoga that took place at Parliament Hill at different times on the hill outside, and so many people that would participate in that. And would it take place out front next to the cannons?
Yeah, so we did have it out in the front yard. So
impressive.
It's nice. Beautiful view out there, and
well,
then I got to come in and do the tour after. So
yes, that's quite impressive, and so thank you for that.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to the updated flag policy. Mr. DeHaan.
Good morning, everybody. So I think kind of a fun topic to talk about this morning, looking for council input. As you may have noticed, we have installed the 2 new flagpoles along with the electric car chargers and whatnot. So that was bundled all into a big project. And those additional flagpoles were really to allow us a little more flexibility in terms of what flags or the multiple flags we could fly at this building. In particular, like if there's special events and things like that. So I think the feedback I'm really most interested in getting from council on this report, so we can come back with the updated policy, is the concept of what is essentially the 4th flag. The 3rd flag, the 3rd flag would be a county flag that we'd fly, and then the 4th flag is really, there's a couple options there for council, which what I suggest as alternative 1 is to fly the local municipal flag of whoever is the elected warden in that year. The alternative we could go with is to fly, just rotate through local municipal flags. I suggested the warden, and just to be quite honest with council, is just then we don't have to think about changing the flag every month. But that's not a hard thing to do. I mean, it's just a simple administrative efficiency that I was trying to capture there, recognizing that over time every local municipality would likely have equal flag time. And then, of course, whenever we are recognizing special events or flying commemorative flags, whatever that 4th flag is down, and then the commemorative flag comes up. And if there's 2 things we're commemorating, then the county flag would come down, the other one would come up. So that's the idea behind this, is just trying to make sure our policy is in line with the flexibility we now have. So I'll leave it to council to provide some informal direction so I can get the policy ready for next time.
Thank you, Mr. DeHaan. Questions, comments, thoughts? Councillor Jaworski, then Councillor Broad.
Thank you. Through you, Warden. Thank you, Ben, for this. And maybe this is a bit offside as a comment, but I mean, what's the purpose of these flags? Is for when the public are coming by and seeing, like visually. And I mean, and no offense to the warden, I don't know if the average member of the public would really understand the significance of the flag being, the sitting warden, or even as they rotate through. So I mean, I would be more inclined to say, we kind of leave that one empty for when it's for special use, for other, for example, like Pride Month or. Yeah, those sorts of things. So that's the suggestion I wanted to make.
Thank you. Councillor Broad, then Councillor Densham.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Thanks, Ben, for the quick report and update. My opinion. Certainly like to see our flags of the 6 municipalities flown. So I like the idea of it rotating through. I know in our council meetings, flags are a big deal, and as brought up at many meetings, we get many requests for /events or recognition, and we enjoy flying different flags on our poles, and I think it's important. I think we should take the effort to recognize the municipalities and recognize groups that are looking to fly flags at different times of the year.
Thank you. Councillor Densham.
Yeah, thank you. We've had very vocal individuals in our municipality in terms of the order and everything, so I did my checking to make sure that you're following the policy, so thank you for doing that. Yeah, I think I'd be a big supporter of having the 4th flag rotate throughout the municipality. If you did it every other month, it would hopefully keep instead of every month, it would keep the amount of times you'd have to change it to a minimum. But I think it's appropriate. We are a unified county, and I think it's appropriate to have representation across each of the municipalities throughout the year.
Further thoughts? Councillor Bergeron.
I agree. I'd like to see the flag change every 2 months. It's only 6 times a year. It's not that often. Thank you.
Councillor Landry.
Sorry, thank you, through you. So me and Councillor Densham had a discussion on the way in, so now I'm kind of counter. So mentioning the saving time on changing the flag, so holding 2 months would make sense. But again, on comments made by Councillor Jaworski, that with the different, I don't know if there's 6, I know supporting Pride or even the Francophonie or any kind of stuff. So possibly it would be where there's 6 different opportunities to fly or celebrate a specific flag, and the other 6 months would be individual municipality that would have their time to shine on. And thank you very much for fun with flags with Sheldon, or I mean Ben Dahan.
So I'd like to weigh in just a little bit. I like the idea of the rotation, especially since North Dundas doesn't have a flag as of yet. So it wouldn't serve the current warden well to have nothing flying. But I do have a concern about, and I know we're all have the opportunity to think differently about how we manage our local municipalities and the flagpoles. Is there the discussion I do believe the discussion needs to be about what is an appropriate flag to fly outside of the local municipality and the provincial and the national flag. There's different views that are held, I'm sure, throughout the United Counties about what's an appropriate flag to fly in front of your building, and I think there should be at least a discussion or a presentation of what flags are deemed to be appropriate to be flown. Mr. Dahan.
Sure. Just back to the rotation. That's fine. And to be honest, the first time I wrote it that way, and then I said, "Oh, I'll go with the warden," and explain why I picked that one. And I figured I'd have one vote for the warden to fly. But that's an excellent idea to go every 2 months, so we can do that. With respect to the temporary flags, we do in the policy right now, and to me, I think it's in the policy we've got it is structured in a way that provides that, we'll call it like discretion. And essentially it's that it's via resolution from council or at the discretion of the warden. And the alternative that we're adding into the policy in the report is that the CAO will also, have that ability to make that discretion. I guess like the thinking behind it is I don't know if we want to get too prescriptive because of change, things change and there's new causes that continue to surface that make us really, want to support it. So I'd be cautious about trying to enshrine something in the policy, rather leave it up to a little bit more of, discretion, if council brings something forward or staff brings something forward for council support or vice versa, something happens. And the one I think of in particular is the war in Ukraine. That was a pretty quick decision to bring the flag up because we wanted to show that support. So just exercising that discretion in times like that, because the last thing you want to do is end up being 6 weeks away from when you can get an approval to put a new flag up. So I guess from staff's position, I think the policy kind of works in that way, but certainly I guess if council wants to have a discussion about what we like and don't like what we want to make sure we recognize versus not recognize, I'm happy to bring that forward if that's the thought process there.
Well, thank you for that, Mr. Dahan, and just that my experience comes from my experience, and my comments come from my experience. It is prescribed in our bylaw what is flown, so it does eliminate a lot of discussion about, there's, for instance, maybe one group needs a flag flown in the month of July, and there's another group that approaches council and wants a flag flown in the month of July, and it eliminates all of that discussion and concern about what the fly is, one flag more appropriate than the other flag. And I do understand your comment about the war in Ukraine. That is unfortunately a one-off, but the other flags people would approach the Township of North Dundas. Can you fly this flag? Can you fly that flag? And it just became quite a thing to handle for us, or we felt it was giving short shrift to others the way we were making decisions. So anyway, I'm quite comfortable with the plan unless others have other thoughts, but I like the rotation, and I do appreciate that you do have a plan for those requests. Okay, thank you. Madam CEO, you have 4 reports in front of you.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. So the first item that I have on this morning is to look for a direction from council if you'd like to have a brief session to review levels of service. So it's my understanding that administration has had these meetings in previous years. We think that a morning session or a half-day session at the most would likely suffice. Timing of it would be good to have it sooner than later to be able to properly prepare for budget discussions. So we put, just as a suggestion, 2 Monday mornings for council's consideration. If we started at 9, I think we could have it wrapped up by noon, but I'm just looking for council's thoughts.
Sorry, Councillor Gano, I'm going to weigh in right away at the call of the chair sort of thing. Monday, October 30th works best for me. I look around the room.
Yeah.
If it works for everyone, I'd appreciate that, but if there's issues with the 30th, I'm quite understanding of. And Councillor Gano, you had something you wanted to say.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Through you, a question for the CAO. Just so I can understand what information we're hoping to get out of this meeting, is it specifically levels of service in relation to the transportation department, or are we looking at the whole organization? What's kind of the intention here?
Through you, Mr. Warden, really good question. I think primarily focusing on the roads division, but it should incorporate all departments within the county. So, but the transportation department, I think, will likely require the most amount of time.
Anything further, Councillor? Other questions, comments? Okay, quick nod of the head about the 30th then. Thank you very much.
Through you, Mr. Warden, the next item that I have on the agenda is to see if council would like to engage Strategy Corp for an advocacy training session. So many of you might be familiar with Sabine Matheson. She is an excellent, well-known resource amongst many municipal sectors, also worked extensively in a senior role at the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, has done quite a bit of work for the large Urban Mayors Caucus, the Wardens Caucus. So I've got a couple of dates on here to see if council would be interested. And what I envision is a session that would be probably about 3 hours, again, a morning session. And I think that we could invite all of the councillors from the local municipalities, as well as CAOs. I'd be happy to relay some feedback on what some of the priorities are for the local municipalities to Sabine in order to kind of understand what subject matters might come up. What I would envision is Sabine would do a brief presentation and also help give council guidance when advocating with the province on certain matters, how to be properly prepared, maybe what strategies could be taken, as well as providing some feedback with respect to what the current provincial government landscape looks like. There's been quite a bit of change in cabinet within the Ford government, so I think that it'll be a very good session for everyone. It will allow for preparation as municipalities are looking at putting delegations forward for Roma. And then we would host it in a very central location, so we probably would look to the facility at South Stormont, or we could look at North Stormont in the community hall, but we'll try and find a location that would be suitable. The dates that I've provided, I've got November 3rd, November 9th, and November 10th. November 9th and 10th are no longer available. Sabine has been booked, but November the 3rd is still available, as well as November 13th and the 14th. So that's a Monday and a Tuesday.
Study your calendars. And Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, through you, Warden. Sorry, I got confused between saying through you, Chair, through you, Mayor, through you, Warden. In terms of starting Does it have to start at 9? Is that one of the, like, the restrictions you've heard from Ms. Matheson? Or, I'm just trying to think of, like, what would make it easier for other, you know, members of council who might have, and I don't know the makeup of everyone's councils, but in terms of, like, you know, daytime commitments, I'm not sure if there's any flexibility there.
Sabine will be traveling from Toronto, so the preferred scheduling, she'd have to come and drive the evening before, book a room, and so the morning timeline is what is preferred with Sabine. And so that's part of the scheduling, having her here in person for a few hours or half a day.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. The 13th does not work for me. The 3rd and the 14th are fine. So.
Councillor McDonald?
The 14th, we have a placeholder for joint liaison. So if we could change that, I'm good for the 14th.
Through you, Mr. Warden, yes, I'm aware that we have joint liaison on the 14th, but I think that we could try and have that meeting rescheduled.
Sure. Good.
I'm just going to go back to Councillor Densham. Did you say the 14th would be fine? Yep. Thank you. Further thoughts on the 14th, I guess? 14th at 9 a.m.? I'm not sure what Councillor Jaworski is looking forward to. 5 a.m.?
Yeah, 5.
No, I liked Fridays. I'm just, again, trying to think of colleagues. Like, I know for me, because I'm not this part of this core group, I wasn't going to weigh in, but definitely, like, for myself, and I'm thinking other local councillors, like, Tuesday morning is terrible. But that's, you know, I didn't.
Just to that, I'm quite happy it's not Friday, because we have compressed hours on Fridays at the Township of North Dundas, and we have to shut the doors down for the whole day because of the compressing. But anyway, so the 14th at 9 a.m. Yes, Councillor Bergeron.
I would just like to know the location. I don't know if the location was mentioned.
Through you, Mr. Warden. So the location has not been mentioned yet, so we wanted to get a date and then we'll see what's available.
Okay.
And what we will do, we've talked about a lot of dates in this meeting today, so we will have meeting notices that will go out for everything, so that's in everyone's calendar. Through you, Mr. Warden. The next item is the draft strategic plan. So maybe if council will indulge me and let me to walk through it a little bit. First of all, I think that the day that we had back with Suzanne Gibson was certainly very successful. I thought it was a really good session. And so we've put together this document. I'd like to acknowledge the efforts of Kimberly Castleman in gathering the notes and helping with the wordsmithing, as well as Mr. Todd Lai, who helped us with the graphics and have the document look the way it is. Looking through this document, I tried to take a look at what some other municipalities were doing, and I thought we heard during the strat planning session that not everybody understands who the counties are, so that was part of the philosophy of having a little bit of an introductory into the plan as to who we are and who is on our council. On the page for guiding principles, I did have feedback from Councillor Williams with respect to the vision statement, so we wanted to see if council would prefer to see bring together the people, places, and heritage of our region to create a strong progressive community, and then delete the based on hard work and compassion. And then there was one other comment on the branding page at the very bottom. We just wanted to wordsmith that one slightly to say regular engagement with accessibility advocates across our region to ensure SDG County's communication efforts reach a broad spectrum of residents, regardless of their accessibility needs. So we thought that wording was slightly better than what we had before. We're happy to have any feedback from council. One thing that we also talked about was how are we going to come back with regular reporting. So what I would recommend is we would have an update every year, and we could have that accompanied with a message from the warden at the time. When we present our budgets for 2024, administration will let council know how the budget aligns with priorities going into 2024, as well as accomplishments that we've had in 2023 that have met those priorities. And then I would envision a document similar to this, maybe early, like late spring or early summer, that would kind of be an annual report, similar in sort of style to the plan, to provide an update that would be, I think, palatable and reader-friendly in the community. So those were some of our thoughts. We're looking for feedback from council, if they'd like any changes.
Thank you. Councillor Gaindo and then Councillor Densham.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and through you, apologize for not bringing this up to staff in advance of the meeting, but I did have a question. In our strategic planning session meeting, we did have some conversations of looking towards a multi-year budgeting process. So I was wondering if that's something we're still looking at, and should it be mentioned in the strategic plan itself?
So through you, Mr. Warden, we can absolutely incorporate a component of that. I think that, well, we can look to see where it would be best suited. It probably would be, you know, it might be under advocacy and governance. We'll see, but we'll find a location to put that. But we could put a comment in regarding multi-year budgeting.
Thank you. Councillor Densham.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and it is a very good document, and thank you, Councillor Williams. I think your suggestions are very good. My other point, though, on the pictures, are the individuals who are in the image, are they aware of the fact that this could go into this document? I know, especially with the kids, some parents may or may not be concerned about having their kids in a widely published document.
So the photos that we have come through our communications coordinator, and so we do have the permission of those individuals to use the photos. And if we think there's other photos that we could use, or, you know, we're happy to modify some of those.
Councillor Gaindo.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Through you, a second question. Under the governance review, there's a note to look at the position of warden. I was just wondering what the timeline is for that review. I've mentioned in the past, I think it would do the organization a lot of service. We looked at lengthening the term of that role, and I think that conversation and that report should come back sooner rather than later. So I was just wondering what the timeline was for that.
Through you, Mr. Warden, I have some information already gathered on the subject, so I can endeavor to bring it back in the next coming months, definitely before the new year, if that works.
Anything further on the draft strategic? Councillor Broad, then Councillor Lang, then Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, Warden. Through you, Warden. A couple of questions, comments. One, under branding, is the word "the" being dropped, as in the document it refers to SDG counties, yet the logo still state the counties of SDG. Secondly, under measurements and reporting, I'd like us to look at this document more often and include a scorecard. We had conversations the other day of the strategic planning. I'd like to see us have a scorecard where we can actually measure some activities. For example, you know, the Warden 7 and 7, you know, if we're going to meet those goals, we should be tracking that along the way as just one example. Obviously, if we're building houses, we need to have houses built. We need to have properties in planning available to be built on, and we should track those versus annually looking back to see how we did or what we didn't do. Thank you, Warden.
I just, to Councillor Broad, then I'll get to where I was going. I was just wondering, Madam CAO, if that would be included in the monthly summary, the MAS, though that type of information.
Through you, Mr. Warden, with respect to a scorecard, I think if we want to have certain measurables, I probably would recommend that we bring that back sooner than later to try and make sure that we're tracking what we think we should be tracking, and then determine whether that scorecard is something more so for council or if it's something that we also want to incorporate in a public document, right? So I think that if we get council's direction to move forward with the strat plan, then from that, I think we need to come back and determine how we're going to provide that measurement. Would be my recommendation. I would like to engage senior staff as well to kind of give that some thought.
Councillor Broad, is there more?
Just know my other question on the.
I think that per all of our branding, we are calling it the county's SDG. So the needs to go into that bullet point that you referenced. Todd, would you like to correct that?
Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I had two things. I'm going to go. When under the section about SDG counties, and in the first paragraph, we talk about the fact that the size, we're 65,000. We border Quebec to the east and New York State to the south. We don't mention the other two directions, and whether we should or not, I'm not sure. But my main concern there is I think we should mention Akwesasne. Akwesasne is, you know, whatever, I don't know the official, but it's territory, whatever, but it is, you know, mentioned further down that we would like to work, you know, more with them. So I'd just like to see that mentioned. And whether we mention Prescott Russell and so forth, I don't know. Leave that up to the smarter people than me. And then Councillor Broad brought up the branding. And on the branding page, we do say that we're doing a good job of branding, but on the page before that, under advocacy, we say engage a consultant to assist the county. So we've called it something different there. We should be consistent, I think, as well. Just some places we're county, some places we're the counties. That's my 2 points. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, through you, Warden. I am very happy that I'm here today to see this because it's, I'm very happy to see under the advocacy and governance priority that there is a point on education. And I'd like to propose this, I mean, I know it's very difficult to get like these short sentences just perfect, but I'd gone back to the context from the last strategic plan, and I thought that it would, maybe an extra bullet point and a slight massaging of that bullet point would be warranted to sort of reflect the reality of where we are, and that a lot has moved since the last strategic plan on this topic. And for example, I'm not sure if everyone is aware, but Bill 98, the Better Schools and Outcomes Act, that really recently received royal assent, there's a new line about collaborating with municipalities where, you know, like school boards are meant to collaborate with municipalities to plan for the early and integrated development of school sites and the establishment of child care centers within schools to meet current and future needs of the board. So I think, you know, there's looking to us as well to be an active participant in these things. And so what I would suggest in terms of the 2 bullet points under education, I'd have a first bullet point that says the county is committed, or the counties is committed to working with the province, local school boards, parents, and other stakeholders to maintain the sustainability and vibrancy of our rural schools. And that's a tie back to last term, or even the term before, where we were fighting for keeping our rural schools that are the hearts of our communities, without which, you know, it has a huge negative impact on those communities. So that's a tie back to that. And then the massaging of the current one would be support the SDG Rural Education Committee to advocate for policies that support rural education with various levels of government and school boards. And I guess the one thing, if folks don't like that, it's the word improvements. I think that kind of in the bullet, if you're from an external seat, are you saying, I mean, I think rural education, actually we do a great job of education. It's just a matter about making it sure that everyone can access it. So I don't want folks to look at that and think that there's, you know, that that's the issue. It's more about making sure that it's sustainable and vibrant in our local communities. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Dencham.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Just back on the pictures again, and on the same page, the advocacy page, and I noticed in the document we have a picture with our MP in it, which is great, but since we're talking about MPP, maybe the top picture could be swapped out to something with the MPP in that picture. It applies to the area of focus as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor St. Pierre.
Thank you, and through you, Warden, appreciate this document. I'm sure there's a lot of hard work for even from the day we started on the strat plan. One of the things that I think we should have a stronger message in here. We talk about partnership and collaboration, and this document talks about a little bit about the city. It talks about Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus. It talks about the Great River, but there's little focus on our collaboration amongst our local municipalities. There is a statement in here about our county human resource manager, but I think we also collaborate on planning and development. I think we collaborate on other items. I think we really were strong in our messaging to say we want to collaborate more with our local counties through the transportation department, our libraries, and the whole gamut. I just think we need, I think this document needs stronger language on that collaboration with our local municipalities. I think that was the message that I recall saying and hearing from our different councillors. So that'd just be a comment that I think we need to be a little bit stronger on that messaging, because I think that was one of our primary focuses, and I think that needs to be quite frank with you, I think that needs to be up there amongst number one on our focus and within this document. Just be a suggestion.
Thank you for your thoughts, Madam CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. So through to that point, I think that's an excellent point. And maybe where we have areas of focus, we could put like a separate section that just focuses on collaboration with local municipalities. Like we could make that a section unto itself. So, and then certainly agree with all of the points that you've raised. So we could put in some wording for that as a suggestion. I'm not sure if that is consistent with maybe what your thoughts are, but.
Yeah, thank you, and through you, Warden. Yeah, exactly. And getting really specific on what we are targeting, I think, is a key point as well.
Thank you.
Okay, I want to thank everyone for their comments to this draft strategic plan. There's been lots of good information gone around, lots of good thoughts, and that was a good exercise. If there's nothing else to that, I'd like to have Madam CAO go to the next point, the administrative update.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Just briefly, in September, I've got a series of meetings and dates. We had the AMO conference in August, and Mr. Warden spoke about the Ontario East Conference earlier, I guess it was last week or the week before. Coming up to key dates, we just want to keep a couple of key dates on your calendar. We will send out meeting notices for all of the things that were decided today. And also the Warden's Banquet is on Saturday, October the 21st. I've got a brief update to our QP 1715 negotiations. So QP has reached out to us in the last week to look for dates where we can start to line up meetings to exchange proposals. So we're hoping that that will find its way or get underway in the next 6 to 8 weeks. And I think that's it.
Thank you, Madam CAO. Questions, comments? Seeing none. Thank you. And we're going to jump right down to the expression of interest. Madam Clerk. If
Yes,
you could lead
through
us.
you, Mr. Warden. It's that time of year again. Every year at the September County Council meeting, those councillors wishing to be nominated at the October meeting for the position of warden must formally express their interest in the position. So I will turn it over now to the warden to open the floor to members who wish to serve as warden for 2024.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And yes, I'll start this up, but we will have an opportunity at an upcoming meeting for longer platforms, I guess. I think this exercise is bringing forward your name if you're wishing to be nominated. So, show of hands. Councillor McGillis and then Councillor McDonald. So, Councillor McGillis is wishing his name put forward. Councillor McDonald, the same. Do we have other people that are looking to have their names put forward or put their names forward? Not Councillor Jaworski. I think she wants to, though. If there's, I'm not sure, I've never run a system like this. Do I say first request, second request, third request? No?
No, through you, Mr. Warden. We will have the election process at the next meeting in October, where the nominations will be formally moved, seconded. The people running for warden will have a few minutes to provide remarks, and then voting will take place by County Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor McGillis. Thank you, Councillor McDonald. And then we're going to go right down to, Madam Clerk, the ratification bylaw.
It's moved by Councillor Broad, seconded by Councillor Densham, that bylaw number 5417, being a bylaw to adopt, confirm, and ratify matters dealt with by resolution, be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed.
All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none. And before I ask for the adjournment, I just want to say that was lots of good information, lots of good comments, lots of good thoughts today, especially on that draft strategic plan. It was very enlightening and well appreciated, I'm sure, by all. So I thank everyone for their participation. Madam Clerk, the adjournment.
It's moved by Councillor Landry, seconded by Councillor Broad, that council adjourn to the call of the chair.
All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried.